I'm Dana Austin, and this is Next Level Awareness. In this episode, I'm talking to Chuck Roberts, who is my best friend all through high school. We were talking recently, and he mentioned a few things about the past, and one of them being that apparently I used to do his homework for him, and I have no memory of that. Um, but he also talked to me about some of the horrible things that he went through as a kid before he was adopted when he was 15. And I never knew any of his story. And so we just kind of got to talking about just our perceptions of life when we're kids and some of the things that people go through and just the fact that like not everyone knows just by looking at you the things that you've been through. And sometimes being from a small town, we just feel like everyone knows our story, and that's just not true. He was willing to come on and share some of his personal story with everyone, and I just hope that you get something out of it and just see how much we change as we grow. So anyway, let's talk about childhood. Um, my childhood, like, here's what I think about when I was a kid, because I don't know how much you know about me when I was a kid, but like I told you, like I feel like I had my head up my ass like the whole time we were going to school. And I think it's because I just came from like this family that like they didn't fight. I didn't know we had no drama like at all, like no drama. Um, there weren't a whole lot of kids. A lot of stuff I didn't learn about until I was an adult. So like that's how my family was. I was just like extremely like sheltered, and just with my personality, I think I just like I was in my own world most of the time. So when you said you thought everything was like common knowledge or whatever, I was like, I just know that you and I were in like art classes together, and I was like, hey, Chuck's cool. And like we just got along really good. And so I just didn't, I don't know, I never really asked. I mean, so like tell me about like your like when you grew up, because I don't know any of that stuff. So start at the, I don't know if I would say beginning, but like tell me your story.
Huh, that's interesting. Um, I was born into a very abusive family. The entire family just were was terrible. My grandparents kind of raised me until I was about five, and they were deeply, deeply religious. Um, wouldn't even have a TV in their house because they said Satan would come through it and kill us. So uh, there's that. Um, my biological parents, um, my biological father, he was just a really horrible person. Um, like he would he would basically rape my mom, uh, kind of in front of us kids. Um, he threatened to kill her all the time. And I was then he went to prison when I was five, and then so I just lived with my biological mom after that until I was like um, she got a boyfriend when I was nine, and he turned out to be really abusive too. So, so then that happened. Uh, so yeah, basically, I grew up a little bit different than you, Dana. Uh,
I was gonna
uh,
say.
yeah. So I don't know. You're gonna have to ask me questions because I don't really know where to go.
So
I had a, I had a very
how
traumatic
many
childhood.
how many siblings did you have like with your biological parents?
Um, two full-blooded sisters and a half sister.
Older or younger?
Younger.
All younger. You're the oldest.
Yeah.
Wow. Um, and so what happened to them? I mean, like, are they around? Are they like, do you still have a relationship with them or?
I do not have a relationship with any of that family. My mom signed, I got put into foster care whenever I was 12 because I ran away from home, and she gave up her rights to me. She said that I was grown. She said, well, you're basically grown up now. So, you know,
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
she,
So you were 12 and you ran away. And I guess like let me explain for everyone who's listening because
okay.
of course you and I have known each other for like I don't know. I mean, I
Most
wouldn't
of our
say 40
lives.
years, but I would say at least probably, a good 30 years or so probably. We're from the smallest town, like not I mean, I guess I don't know. I always tell people that I think when we were growing up, there's maybe like 3,000 people in that town. Like I don't know for
I think
sure.
population was 1,500.
So we had about 100 kids in our class, our graduating class. And so I'm just like knowing how my parents, I don't know if I would say they knew everybody in town, but I just like I know that like they knew stuff, but they weren't like gossip people. So like there was a lot of stuff that probably happened that they didn't even know about. So I guess I'm just looking at it as like, God, it's such a small town. And you know how everybody talk about small towns, like everybody knows everyone and what's going on and all that stuff. But like, so you felt like everyone knew, like, where did you go when you ran away? Who did you run away to?
Um, it was actually me and Jason Everingham. You remember him?
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
Um, he was he was having issues with his stepdad, and we decided that we were just gonna run away from home. Basically, we left school, went to the grocery store, stole a bunch of shit, um, went and hid out in a barn that we used to frequent. Because whenever you're a young kid, you find places like that.
Right.
We did, but so um, then we ended up going to Corey Miller's house, and his mom um, knew what was going on, and uh, Josh Davidson, his mom, came over there too, and they all knew what was happening. And she took me to the police station, um, and that's I sort of stayed with Josh for a few days until DHS came and put me into foster care.
So, I mean, I guess that was the other thing I was thinking of was like, were these even like local people? Like, did we even have people like with like child protective services or whatever? Like,
Oh yeah,
were they had like caseworkers and stuff? See, that's like the stuff I didn't know. I didn't know even
that
any of
was
that stuff existed until I was an adult. So,
this is right on the square.
oh, okay. So like so you had like a social worker and they checked in with you and stuff like that. So who's your first like did you go to multiple foster homes or like just one?
No, no.
Okay.
Um, I got really, really lucky and got put with the greatest people that you could be put with. Um, they, I was actually the first kid they ever adopted.
Wow.
Um, so I lived there. Um, see, I was 15 whenever they adopted, but there were other families that were trying to adopt me, but I didn't like them.
Hmm.
Um, and what happened with that was the caseworker, she was talking to me and she was like, well, what do you think about this family in Centerville that's been coming in? You've been having these visits with and everything. I said, I don't like it. And she said, well, what do you want to do? Because I could have just done nothing and just been a ward of the state until I was 18. But I don't know, something inside me said, I was like, well, this feels like my home.
Mhm.
And I didn't say anything else. And then a few days later, um, I got called into the living room, and my caseworker was there, and Johnny was there, and my foster parents were there. And they said, do you want to be adopted by us? And I was like, yeah. And they said, why? I said, because this is my home. You know, I said, this is, I can't think of any place better than this, or anybody better than that. And
Mhm.
they said, yeah.
That's
And
cool. So was Johnny their only biological kid?
yeah, they got into fostering because they were hoping, um, after my mom had Johnny, she couldn't have any more kids, and she
Mhm.
wanted more kids. And they got into it, um, with the purpose of adopting. Um, they wanted to adopt a baby,
Mhm.
but instead they adopted 15-year-old me. You know, because I'm
You hit the
awesome,
jackpot.
and they fell in love with me.
Yeah. Well, that's good. I mean, it doesn't matter how you get there, right?
Yeah,
Sometimes it's just you got there. And then so how many did they adopt after you?
8.
Wow. Wow, that's really cool. So like how many kids, I mean, obviously were they all, was it all while you were still living there, or did you grow up and move out and then they adopted more?
Yeah, I grew up and moved out, and then they just kept on adopting kids. Uh,
That's kind of cool. I mean, were they all pretty much, were they all like kids your age or like younger
no,
or just all different
um,
ages?
all different ages. Um, the oldest one that they adopted was 17, and the youngest one that they adopted was like 3.
Oh, okay.
So, and um, 2 of them. Okay, my sister had a brother that got placed. They both got placed from an Amish family into that home, and
Wow.
they both got adopted. And then there was another set of brothers that got adopted too. So my parents, my mom especially, is very much like, oh, I can't let anything happen to these kids. I gotta keep them here so nothing can happen to them, you know.
Yeah.
And she just sort of went crazy and wanted to adopt every kid that came in.
Yeah. Well, I
Which,
can see how that could happen,
you know,
especially when you have a heart for taking care of kids who've been through a lot of stuff.
yeah,
Um,
they were special needs parents. So kids
mhm.
that had like really emotional problems and came from traumatic backgrounds and stuff like that. Kids like me.
Yeah. Well, they probably had a lot more patience than a person who maybe didn't have to deal with special needs or a child that had other emotional needs, you
Yeah,
know.
because Johnny, he had his disabilities, you know. So I mean, they were used to the emotions that come with all that and everything, and so these kids would come. Sometimes we got really bad kids, you know, but most of them were pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you always hear, you see on TV, and that's like really the extent of my knowledge of people in the foster care system. I've never really had a whole lot of experience, even as an adult, with, and maybe I've met people, but I just didn't know. But like on TV, you see, it's like you know, kids bounce around from home to home and have horrible experiences with their foster families. And
Some do.
so,
Like I said, I got lucky.
yeah.
So
Well, and I imagine we're from such a small town, there probably wasn't a whole lot of different options for foster families. I mean,
there actually was quite a few.
really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, that's news. See, I told you, like, I just didn't know. I don't
Well,
even
whenever
remember.
I just didn't. I was just worried that you were gonna, because you were like, oh, it might get dark, and I'm like, oh fuck, I'm gonna have to talk about all the abuses that I went through, and that's why I was nervous. That's why I said that, because it's like,
Well, okay, so let's not talk about that specifically, but like, did you get counseling or anything for any of that stuff? Have you
yeah,
ever
well,
had
yeah.
like,
Whenever I was
oh,
a
okay.
kid, I I didn't understand counseling then. Um, I've gone through counseling as an adult, which has really helped me in my adult life. But
Mhm.
as a kid, I was just like, "Fuck you guys! I'm not. I don't want to talk to anybody about anything." You know.
Well, were you embarrassed, or was it more of just like you were just mad that you were put in that situation?
I didn't like people knowing anything about me, and yeah, it was embarrassing. I mean, whenever you go through things like that, you don't want to tell people that hey, I was molested, or I was beaten, or I was starved. One time, this is gross, but uh, one time I threw up and I was made to eat my own vomit
Oh,
because it was a waste of food
oh my
for me to
gosh.
throw up. And like whenever I say I went through trauma, I went through fucking trauma.
Yeah.
And I can talk about it now, but it's not something that I try and put out there. And especially going to a stranger as a teenager and telling them those things, yeah, it is completely embarrassing. You don't want to talk about those things, so I wouldn't. I just refuse. And
But so,
later on,
okay. So, like, sorry to interrupt you, but do
no, you could.
you, yeah, so it was embarrassing and you didn't want to talk about it, but did you ever feel like they might not believe you?
I don't know. Never really thought about that. I guess because I mean, my life has sort of been like a fucking cartoon. You know, I mean, that's whenever people start finding out stuff about me, they're like, Jesus Christ, you did this and you did that and you did this and you did that. And I'm like, yeah, I did. I did all this crazy shit that nobody does any of. And I've experienced more life by time I was 25 than most people do their entire life. I've gone through so many different things, and people just don't get it, you know? So I don't really get into it or talk about a lot of stuff, not on purpose. If somebody brings it up, you know, then yeah, I talk about stuff. Other than that, no.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's especially like being, I don't know. I mean, so you see people out there and they've gone through something really hard and then they become like the spokesperson for it, right? Like, I mean, I have definitely used my past experiences in a lot of ways to try to help other people, right?
Yeah,
Um, and so I totally get that, but like there's some stuff that I'm sure that you can't talk about. Not only would it like not help people, but like, I mean, you can talk about it in the general sense. You don't have to go into like specifics, but so I guess part of me is like you said something before, and I don't know if I mentioned it like at the beginning, but like when I said, I basically had my head up my ass. Because you were like, well, I thought it was common knowledge. Like you're like you were surprised that I didn't know
I thought
about,
that
all that stuff, and you were like, well, I just thought it was common knowledge. Like, who would have told me if you didn't? tell me? Who would have told me? Who do you think would have like said, "Oh, Chuck's been through all this stuff"?
And see, and that's to me, like as a kid, like okay, so whenever I got put in a foster care,
Mhm.
like all the teachers, they know, they know what's going on and stuff like that. So to me, like common knowledge is like, and these fuckers would look down on me, like seriously.
Well, they
Um,
probably first in some cases they probably felt really sorry for you, knowing what you'd been through.
no, I mean
No?
like, um, okay, a lot of teachers would look, and it wasn't just me. They would look down on kids that were in the system,
Mhm.
believe it or not, you know, and they,
Like it was your fault somehow.
yeah,
Like you were a
and
bad
like,
kid.
yeah, exactly. That's it was like, oh, you ran away from home, you were a bad kid, you, and you've, I was a very violent child. I mean, I used to fight all the time. I got into so many fights. I got every day in fifth grade. I had detention every single day, fifth grade. And so, I mean, like, yeah, I did a lot of bad shit, and a lot of it was acting out because I didn't have an outlet. You know, I didn't have any way to get away except for reading, and that's how I got stuck in comic books so bad was because it was an escape from reality for me. Is what it was. You know, it was just like with everything that I would do, it would become this escape from reality, which I was always running from.
I get that. But now that you say that, I think, I think that obviously the teachers weren't told your story. Like
Oh no,
they just thought you were in foster care because you were a bad kid because you ran away. They were they were treating kids like you based on their assumption of what they thought they knew about kids in foster care, but they weren't looking at the actual individual person and what had happened to them to put them where they were. And so I think that maybe some of those teachers might have had a little more compassion if they had actually known that it was your parents that was the problem, it wasn't you, and I mean you were obviously, so it wasn't common knowledge. So I think, we all kind of go through life. I was just watching something, and it was a really messed up show, but something that in one of the episodes the guy was saying was he was walking down the street and he would always have his hood up and his head down because he thought that like everyone he would meet on the street could just see right through him and know all the horrible things that had happened to him. Like he was like, he got to where he would just like try to be as invisible as possible because, you kind of get that like that feeling that even though you don't know this person and they don't know you, that you must be wearing all of this stuff on the outside,
yeah, and
and so people can just see it.
that's and see, whenever you're a kid, you just assume that every, I don't know,
No,
maybe is
I get
just
what you're
me,
saying.
but
I,
like I just felt like everybody always knew my business, you know, like
yeah.
I was
Well, because you'd been violated already, like horribly as a kid. Like you'd had so many horrible things happen to you that you had no control over anything, really. Like, and you had all this stuff happen to you. And so like I guess you just had no feeling like you had anything that was private.
yeah, exactly. I did feel like my shit show was out there for everybody.
Yeah. And I wonder how many like how true that really is. Because like I said,
Yeah,
I mean, I was like, I don't know if I just really didn't know, or and if I was really that sheltered, or if that was just you imagining that like everyone knew.
see, and that makes me wonder, you know, because I just always assumed that everybody knew, always, you know. So it's like, okay, did people just not know anything? because first of all, we're from
If you
a small
didn't
town.
tell people, if you didn't tell them, the only way they would know is through the rumor mill and gossip. And it's like, who would have been, if you didn't tell, I mean, like, did you tell anyone ever? Like friends
No,
of your age?
why would I? There was, you don't want to, like I said, it's
Yeah,
embarrassing.
you don't want to tell
wanna,
people. That's what I'm saying. So how would any of the people that we went to school with, how would they have ever known?
I don't know. I just assumed that they did, you know,
I,
I'm just like, it's common knowledge, people just know. And apparently they didn't. You didn't.
well,
And
I mean, I didn't, and I was like one of your best friends or your best
yeah,
friend. I don't know. Like, I, I, I
and
don't know.
like, I didn't tell you,
Yeah. Well, and I could see why you wouldn't. I mean, and so like I would never ever ever be like mad. Oh my God, you never told me that. Like, that's your story. It's your story to tell. If you don't want to, then nobody should make you. But um, yeah, I don't think it was common knowledge. And you know what? That like, so then we go back to like, okay, well, so all through school, if you thought that was common knowledge, you know, I had horribly low self-esteem, honestly, like all through school, where I probably didn't have any reason to, and so I look at you where you had all these friends and you got along with everybody and you really like had, like, you understood all these people, and me, I was kind of like, I just felt like I never fit in anywhere. So it's kind of, it's interesting if you really think about it. Like, I should have been like, I should have, because I really did probably fit in with everyone else, and I just didn't know it. So I think we all just like, everybody has their own messed up story.
but like, I didn't like have like a clique or anything. I never really actually fit into a peg. I was just able to get along with everybody.
Yeah. Well, and I kind of feel like that was me too, but I just didn't have like close friends outside of school. So,
Yeah.
but thank you for talking to me. I mean, thank you for
Well,
sharing some of your story. And I really think that at some point, somebody's going to get something out of some of this. Like, maybe not all of it, but some of it. And, if nothing else, it was fun. I mean, I had a good time.
Yeah, I mean, I'll always talk to you. I don't know. I feel like I'm a good example of, just because shit happens to you doesn't mean you can't be a good person. Doesn't
Right.
mean that you can't. Doesn't mean that it's going to ruin you. You know, I very much am. The power of positivity is a big thing for me, um, and if people can't look at the positive in life, then that's a problem.
Thank you so much for listening. I will be posting the full hour and a half conversation on YouTube in case you're interested in hearing more about how we grew up, our high school experience, how we became friends, and what we each did after high school. Follow Next Level Awareness on Facebook and Instagram for the latest episodes. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you like to listen, and leave us some feedback. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, please reach out to nextlevelawarenesspodcast@gmail.com.